Let me, on behalf of SALO and of course Fozia, start by congratulating you on a well done election. I think that you showed us that it's possible to do an election where the will of the people can actually be respected and against all odds. So we want to congratulate you for the different roles you're playing and what you did to try and mobilize the people of Malawi to go vote, but also to be able to have institutions that you can start to say, now we can have some confidence that our institutions are strong enough to withstand anything that will try to subvert the will of the people. So congratulations. I don't know if it has dawned on you that you have inspired the region and particularly me as a Zimbabwean. I think where we are from time to time when we talk about the Malawi situation, we try to look at what lessons can we learn. And I'm hoping that going forward, we should be able to have those discussions with you. So as you're aware, I'm Munjodzi Mutandiri with SALO, and I'm joined by a fellow SALOian, Fozia. She's also with SALO. I think most of you will know her. And maybe we can just start by introducing ourselves.
My name is Beatrice Mateo. I am founder and executive director of Coalition for the Empowerment of Women and Girls, CWAG. I am also a member of the Human Rights Defenders Coalition, Malawi.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Billy Mayaya. I'm a member of the Human Rights Defenders Coalition, the regional chair for Central Region in Malawi. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Habiba Osman. I am currently working with the Malawi Human Rights Commission as the executive secretary, but I'm also a human rights activist and defender. Thank you. But I think maybe from your introduction, just to say that I think I'm also one of the people that is really proud of our country, especially the human rights defenders, Beatrice and Billy, under Billy's leadership and the rest, for really carrying the day, but also I think restoring the legitimacy of human rights, but also just creating an enabling space for people to come and express themselves. I think the work that the human rights defenders have done in Malawi is so tremendous that at least almost every other day now we are getting to see people demonstrate on various issues. So these guys have been the pioneers. I know myself and Billy, I think were the first people I think to be arrested in around 2012. When we went to demonstrate, we were the 5 of us. But then I think it was not fashionable to demonstrate and we got arrested, and I think people, castigated us left, right, and center. But now fast track 2020 from 2012, we're seeing that, I mean, even over little things, everyone is out there demonstrating. So I give thanks to, my fellow defenders, especially Billy and them, who've been very consistent, but at the same time have spearheaded a way and also provided an environment for others to, demonstrate, but to also express themselves. But beyond that, to start holding duty bearers to account. So I am so pleased with that. But also, I mean, even Beatrice, as you know, that space in Malawi, this space doesn't have a lot of females, and to have females like Beatrice who've stood with the men, to demonstrate, but also to hold duty bearers to account is really commendable. So I'm so proud that I've joined now the human rights space where I can express myself, but also I think be part of these pioneers and trendsetters in Malawi. Thank you.
Let's go to Comrade Billy. What's been the mood from post-election? What is the post-election environment looking like? Is it what you anticipated? Are you moving in a trajectory that you think takes you to where your hopes and aspirations have been as you have been pushing for this election as a coalition, but also as human rights defenders? Do you feel that you are on the right path? How do you characterize the post-election environment in Malawi?
Well, I've characterized it as being a mishmash of mixed feelings. One of euphoria and one of an anticlimax, so to speak. Euphoria in that I think the government that was ushered in brought in a spirit of hopefulness that things would change and that the dynamics would change. But then on the low side is that there's been business as usual. Nothing has really changed. But after the elections, it's like things devolved to the same old way of doing things. The government bureaucracy taking shape and form, and all the campaign promises that were made have been, watered down by pronouncements of the government. But I think still we are hopeful that this government has only been in place for about 6 months, and therefore we are giving them space to, to show their true colors. But I think there is still a long way to go in terms of fulfilling most of the campaign promises they made.
Ah, perfect. Beatrice, the same question again from where you are. How would you characterize the post-election environment, and what has been the main challenges, any notable progress that you have sort of observed from where you are, in interactions with the new administration as an organization, but also as women in general in Malawi?
Okay, thank you. One thing I forgot to mention in my introduction is that as women human rights defenders, we have started to mobilize in keeping with regional trends. So far we have a Central Region chapter and the Northern Region chapter. So I happen to be a chair of the Central Region chapter of Women Human Rights Defenders. Now, coming to your question, I think the first positive that for me I see is that at least we are able to say that the government was legitimately elected by the majority of the people and no foul play was suspected. Now, moving on, I think we have seen that they are open to being approached. They have been approached by different civil society groups. We have seen the HRDC having conversations with the government. We have seen the women's movement engaging the government. However, although I am hopeful, I am also a bit wary, because I think when we consider the fact that, we were together in the struggle, we may tend to feel like, we already have them on our side. I mean, looking at the fact that when you engage, they are open, they listen. However, when it comes to acting, that's a whole different ballgame, which is different to the previous government, which would write out, not listen to whatever you're saying. So I see that as a challenge in a way, because then we have to do advocacy in a different sort of way. However, as you're saying, it is too early to say. I think we remain hopeful. Of course, it is there's a worrying trend in terms of women leadership, despite being engaged on different levels, and despite the government committing to it. During the campaign period, they signed the Women's Manifesto. Even during the inaugural speech, they committed to 40-60. It is even a matter of law in our country. Now, despite having that, we see that there's a bit of a relaxed attitude, as if the women are not there, which is a bit worrisome in terms of now building trust and good governance for the new government. I think let me stop here for now.
Thanks, Beatrice. And just to jump to Tadala.
I think I agree. I've joined at the point where Beatrice was speaking. I agree that at some extent you feel that, it seems as if things are changing. The government is responsive and it engages you. So you're like, okay, probably things will change. But at times, the engagement is there, and then you're not quite sure what they will do. So for instance, like the issue of board appointments, they clearly understood and acknowledged that the representation was not sufficient or according to the Gender Equality Act, but they even were arguing on how the Gender Equality Act is not necessarily providing for appointments in boards. It says public service. So at the end of the day, there is a loophole which they are able to say, well, this is not for public service. Now, the difficulty with the board was that they had already appointed, they put in the newspapers. Now, we were at some point we were told that they had to remove some people so that they put in women. They also had to add in women in other boards. So again, you see, as Beatrice has said, that it shouldn't be an afterthought. It should be the norm that we should ensure the 60-40. So that one is still a thing that we have to observe going forward. And even the ministerial positions, it was more of women being deputy, most women being deputy than actual ministers on the other hand. And also so it was more like acknowledging the stereotype of women are more of deputy material than the full-fledged ministerial material. On the other side, I would say that it was quite interesting and quite encouraging to note that the judges that were appointed at the High Court, they ensured that there was 50-50 appointments. And we've seen that across several institutions. So I think we still have to observe. Now, on the electoral issues, we've noticed that the electoral law has actually been changed. So the law actually now provides for 50+1 for the presidential. There was a ruling or an indication that 50+1 would also apply to councillors, I should say, and also MPs. But then when they went to parliament with that law, they ended up saying no, for MPs and councillors, it will be first past the post. So it's just majority. On the other side, we've seen there've been by-elections that have been conducted. Funny enough, in the north, there was quite a lot of violence, which you would have thought that now should not be the usual thing, but there's been violence. There have been other by-elections that have not been able to be undertaken because there are injunctions. So I think right now, most people are in the observatory stage to see how they proceed, how they conduct the things. Some of the things, they are justifications that you are given, and then you are like, oh, okay, fine, and then told that you should wait up until a certain stage. So I think we're in the waiting phase, but I'm not quite sure how patient Malawians will be going forward. Thank you.
Habiba, from a human rights point of view, do you sense that you guys can build on a culture of really ensuring that issues of violence that Adela is raising, the nature of engagements between citizens and government can be different? What do you think looks like the trajectory that you might be having in the next few years?
Well, I think starting with a positive note, on a positive note, I would say that that's what I would want to see, because you've preempted, already to say that we don't want to see a culture of violence. But I think what has been seen with the by-elections, for example, the Tonse Alliance, which is sort of like a platform of, political parties that were on the same side during the past elections. Now they're starting to split in terms of, competing in bringing forward the candidates that they want. For me, has really raised some red flags, in the sense that I see that as we get maybe, towards, the next election, we'll see, a lot of divisions, but also competition and also breaking ups and stuff. So you can actually tell that it was maybe a marriage of convenience. Maybe my friends can disagree with me, but the by-elections for me are a case in point where I see that, I am not positive that, there will be really that good relationship, with the parties. And also even some of the issues, for example, that we've received as reports, from some women, from some of the parties, which, indicates to me that, if we don't sort of like come in as, human rights defenders or the Human Rights Commission, we may end up seeing, some violence escalating at some point in future. That said, what is maybe positive is the relationship that we see of the vice president, who belongs to the other party, and the president. I mean, publicly they're demonstrating that they are one and they want to work together. And the rhetoric and even the body language itself is very positive. And I see that they're complementing each other and one another in many respects. And you can see that these are two individuals who really want to work at promoting unity and also instilling a spirit of hard work within the public sector and other things. Like, for example, they're supporting the reforms, jointly. And for me, I think that is a positive. So if the leaders continue maybe on that trajectory, then we can say we have hope. But sometimes it's usually not even the leaders, it's the people that surround them are the ones that sort of like bring divisions, and then disputes arise because of the, inter-party sensitivities and politics. But the leaders so far now, as we can speak, they are, I think they are really demonstrating, good statesmanship, but also I think there is cordiality and respect for each other and one another. So for me, I think that's what gives me hope. In terms of, I think, the systems that we have right now, I would say that having a judiciary that is very strong in the country is very, very critical. And I think the judiciary must be commended in terms of governance structure and system, because we have a strong judiciary that cannot be influenced. But also, I think the ruling, as Tadala has said, the 50+1, will make sure that at least maybe the elections in future, they are, are structured in such a way that they are free. But whoever wants to win has to work hard for that. So for that stance that the judiciary has given or has provided, sort of like sets the pace for the future, and also provides maybe a strong sort of like a terrain for political parties to really improve if they want to work at winning the elections in the coming years.
Comrade Billy, from a civic society space, how are you seeing the space, the hunger for people to really organize and mobilize themselves around the issues that affect them on a daily basis, but also what has been the response, which I think you have touched on a bit, in terms of real organizing, or people are in this mood that no, it's time to celebrate. And as human rights defenders, do you think that you have turned the corner? And what are the few things that going forward you think you might need to focus on internally as human rights defenders?
I think as a civil society, we still need to inculcate the spirit of civic engagement or active citizenship on the part of citizens, because they still feel that HRDC will always be there take the pop shot from government as opposed to citizens themselves being moved to act. But I think from the women's movement, the feminist movement, I think there's been an effort to speak out on issues pertaining to gender-based violence and sexual harassment. So that's been a plus. But I think that needs to cascade down to the broader society so that they are also seriously engaged. I also wanted to get back to one of the points which Habiba was making. I think the challenge for the current government is that they have this banner of Tonse Alliance, or Tonse meaning, togetherness, but they haven't well defined that philosophy properly, because it works as an electoral alliance, but as a political alliance, it doesn't work. And therefore, the supporters of both parties seem to be pulling themselves apart in terms of that support. And there's no real agreement on which candidates to promote in a particular election. In this case, the by-elections. Both parties are in an alliance, but then they're having two separate candidates standing on the same ticket. So that's the question that needs to be addressed in terms of the new government addressing the shortfalls of their current alliance.
Oh, thank you. I think I'll pause my last question, and then Fozia can jump in with questions if she has. So the last question is a bit more externally. It's so what could happen outside, and I know that you guys are not started, or the new government started on a bad footing with the South African government. I see that your relations are not so good in the last few days because of the challenges around Mr. Bushiri. But we're hoping that it's minor. The region can really stabilize and move forward. What I wanted to check is, again, from SALO's point of view, around consensus building on issues that are affecting the region and individual member states, but also issues of solidarity building, that if the people of Malawi do well, those of us in Zimbabwe, in Zambia, in South Africa, we also do well. How do you conceive the kind of solidarity that you want to see from outside towards Malawi, particularly from civic society in the region? What we saw is that we had this complaint towards the elections, just before the elections. Most of you guys were saying that there is very little solidarity coming from the region. And I think that few of the meetings that we have seen happen on Malawi, in Zimbabwe, in Zambia, in South Africa, people were not really aware of the dynamics that were taking place in Malawi. That would mean that there wasn't as strong a solidarity as we would expect to see at a regional level. But what are the asks that you think you have, not just to institutions that are formalized like SADC or civic society, but also to the citizens of the region regarding what you think Malawi is on a path to? Fozia, any question that was on your mind?
Yeah, I think for me, Malawi has actually been a pioneer country, I think, especially in Southern Africa. And I think what we're seeing in a lot of neighboring countries, particularly in Tanzania, Zambia, and even Zim, I think we're seeing sort of a regression in terms of democracy. And so what lessons can we learn as a region, and how does this bode for democracy in the region, Malawi's big achievement? So if anyone can touch on that, I'd be quite interested. also especially in light of President Lazarus Chakwera also meeting President Emerson Mnangagwa, and what sort of bilateral engagements, how can Lazarus Chakwera influence President Mnangagwa to take a more, I don't know, softer approach in engaging with the citizens?
So that's a good question, actually. I would also want you, any one of you who is free, to touch on, we've seen the president move across the region. Obviously, he's trying to establish himself as a key member of the region. What influence are you expecting as civic society, as role players, stakeholders in Malawi, that the president can take certain positions regarding the region? Are you happy with some of the outcomes of the interactions he has had in the countries that he has visited so far? I think we have seen communications to the effect of what was discussed, what the thinking was. Is that the kind of trajectory you have for Malawi's role in the region? And are you happy with what he has been up to now? And obviously, what can be done moving forward? Maybe a bit of help from our side, to our side rather. What can we do better to influence President Chakwera to take a more positive or progressive stance regarding issues that are affecting the region?
All right, I was saying that what I've noted is in the diplomatic meetings that they're having, they're very focused on some issues. For instance, they went to Mozambique. One of the key issues they were talking about is transport. I think they've also talked about the security issues, about the insurgencies. I think for fear that that might affect Malawi. In Tanzania, I think there were other issues that were discussed, but they kept other issues of human rights violations, which were, I'm not quite sure if they discussed them. So again, I think it goes back to the perspective that they seem to be first setting a rapport with other regional countries and not really pushing a particular agenda. So we seem to be in the waiting stage. For your role as SALO, what can you do? I think you would have to be proactive. If there are organizations or institutions that can advocate the issues that you want to raise about your country, share with them so that they can transmit them to the Malawian government. If I'm not wrong, the incoming chairperson of SADC should be the Malawian president. So he will definitely be having a bigger platform of influence. So probably right now, people might be more forgiving to say, okay, he's building the rapport. But next time, if he's going to Tanzania or he's going to Mozambique, people will expect him to have acted on particular issues of human rights and any issues that are arising. So I'll end there for now.
Okay, so I think I'll look at the angle of mobilizing what you can learn as civil society. You want to mobilize citizens. I think what I have learned, so a few things that could be observed from our own process. The mobilization of citizens, I think the power of social media in getting people to, whatever we did, it was very powerful in getting people to come out. I think also what I observed from there, it was like people were already angry. They just needed a sort of order, a sort of mobilization in their disorder so that they could be able to express their anger. And the other thing that can also be learned from the process is to never always rely on external observers. You see how the initial elections, how the external observers, especially the Western ones, they painted a different picture to what we ourselves had seen. And in the end, we conducted a re-election without even observers, and Malawians were able to accept those results. So I think at the end of the day, it's that building of this a citizenry that believes that it is our country after all, and there's nothing for us without us. We need to be at the forefront of whatever is happening in our country.
Yes, just building on from what my colleagues have just shared, I think there are many entry points, and Tadala has mentioned the SADC one. I want to mention the fact that Malawi is going to be sitting in the Human Rights Council from 2021 to, I think, 2023, 3 years. I think that is a huge opportunity, and also an entry point for Malawi when it sits in that council, in terms of looking at the human rights situation, for example, within the region. That will put pressure on the government, being also a leader in the region, but also sitting in the council, in terms of how they perceive and how they act as a role model in issues of human rights. I mean, they were overwhelmingly voted to be sitting in the council. So again, I think when you're sitting in the council, there's so much pressure for you to sort of like clean up your house. Already we are noting that, there are some tensions with the relationships, for example, that we've started forging with Israel. And we are getting, a lot of a lot of backlash for that decision. And again, I don't know how that will augur, within the coming years, because it seems like, we are solicited, we are taking the route of having an embassy in Jerusalem, and also really going against some of the UN resolutions that have been made. So I think for us, it's something to watch, and especially how it plays out. But again, at the same time, I think the fact that Malawi is being given this platform, and it's also being seen as a role model in terms of, democracy as well as human rights, it's good that, SALO capitalizes on that by really pushing, the agenda on for Malawi with maybe other countries. Again, I think also you have got a responsibility maybe to document these things. I know maybe you've done a position paper already. I don't know if you've done it on, the best practice that Malawi has shown, but I think maybe even doing a documentary that can be shared within the region on how Malawi really has reached this far would be very key, because I'm sure other networks would also benefit from the positives that have actually come out from this nation. And I think SALO can actually do a documentary, and I mean like a short movie documentary of the Billies, speaking, one of the judges speaking, the Tadala speaking, just to sort of like put that out there. But also I think to remind even the politicians that, we are coming from this, this far. This is what we expect to be done. Because as you said, once people are in power, they forget. I mean, I have my own reservations about how we went to Tanzania, and we seem to be, lovey-dovey with, Tanzanians, when we know that Tanzania is also going through a lot of things. Again, I would have expected that maybe part of the conversation would have been, hey, please, can you really tone down on, the issues that are taking place in this country? Unfortunately, I didn't get to see the script. I don't know what transpired in Tanzania, but if indeed that was done for trade, well and good. But I think as a leader, or as a country that is positioning ourselves for leadership in human rights, democracy, we should capitalize on those visits or anything like that to really demonstrate on how we ourselves have been progressive as a country. So I think that is something that I would want to comment on for now, and just to say thank you again for the opportunity to have us speak to you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Comrade Billy, the last word belongs to you.
I was saying that President Chakwera's formative years as a charismatic Pentecostal preacher have influenced his decisions so far. If you look at the decision to open an embassy in Jerusalem, it is rather a naive approach to international relations, and not driven by the advice of his international relations guru. And that is unfortunate, because it weakens Malawi's position, because the president does not project the international relations and the UN resolutions which Habiba talked of. And that's a dangerous path for us to go on as a country. Secondly, the issue of influencing the decisions of neighboring states like Zimbabwe, Tanzania, and so on. We can also see a very weak trajectory on its part. And therefore, I think there's need for SALO to also issue strongly worded statements, either against such decisions and pointing into, a more international relations kind of perspective, so that, sooner or later he gets the message that I think civil society across the region are not happy with such decisions. And I think in terms of the way forward for the future, there's need for a joint process which looks at the convergence of institutions across the region, looking at the nature of international relations, and then coming up with a common position as civil society. Lastly, I would like also to thank you for inviting me once again to this discussion, because I think it is slowly allowing us to build a path on a plan of action as the region. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, we won't be able to find enough words to say thank you for taking your time. We know that 8 o'clock is an odd time to call people to a discussion. I know that, it's an odd time, but we're really grateful that you could find it to find time to ask. Some of the questions you asked might be very silly from where you are, but I think we have been able to get a better picture of what you guys are observing, what you are seeing, and it can also help us as SALO to try to say what is our next programming area with regard to Malawi. But more importantly for me, it's how do we use the Malawi experience to really give lessons to the region, particularly the hotspots. We're seeing what's happening in Uganda, though it's not in the region, but I think it's the trend we saw in Tanzania a few days ago. We see that in Zimbabwe on a daily basis. In Zambia, it's the same, opposition leaders complaining that there is serious heavy-handedness from those that are ruling. The issue of COVID at this particular time, how it has been used to suppress dissenting voices and try to stop organized defenders from organizing. We have a lot of challenges, and Malawi has been able to be that island in the middle of all this chaos at a time of COVID, to be able to do an election that can, by and large, even losers can say, no, this election was credible. This is a true will of the people. So I really, for me personally, I think that I've already done that with some of you on the platform. I think I'll continue to have platforms that are looking at a regional sort of map or landscaping of the region, what's happening at a regional level, and I'll continue to push to have a Malawian on most of these platforms. And obviously I'll approach some of you guys and say, can you please be a speaker at this platform? But as SALO, we are really grateful that we had an opportunity to work with you, and we're hoping that we can build on this 2021 moving forward.